Welcome. I want to sit quietly for a few minutes just to arrive, but um, oh yeah, no, that's working okay. Before I do, I just wanted to, it was brought to my attention that today is the beginning of Diwali in India. Sharon Landreth called me yesterday, and she and I have gone up to the temple together several times for Diwali, which is the festival of light in India. And like there's so many candles and lights, and it's a festival of light that you can actually like see it from space, on satellite pictures and stuff. It's a big devotional um, expression in recognition of the Great Mother and the return of the light, kind of like a phoenix sort of moment. So that starts today. And then it was also brought to my attention that it is a Scorpio new moon, which is also the sign of the phoenix. So great day, guys. Here we are. All right, let's sit for just a few minutes and kind of actually get here. Uh, Gonna get my little timer going here. Okay. So it's a sense of kind of just settling, arriving. When you learn to ride a horse, they teach you to kind of sandbag into the saddle. You sit down, take your seat. And we don't have to fight or resist or try to quiet the mind. It's more like an allowing of what is. And during that allowing, in that movement, there is a release of whatever is coming is allowed and released to go. And when we relax our attention enough to allow things to just naturally flow in and out of consciousness, arriving and going, coming and going, sensations and sounds and all the rest. In the relaxing out of the reaction to phenomena, the mind and the body just naturally begin to quiet and settle without a lot of striving or trying. It's sort of a natural movement like the out breath. And in that recognition is also the simple, obvious sense of right here and right now. Breath is happening, heart is beating. I'm happy everybody made it today. Yay. Awesome. I think where I wanted to start today is with kind of a reminder. It sort of came out of the phone call that I had with Sharon yesterday, but also Sharon Landreth, but also um, Adya did a intensive, um, I don't know, last week something, I can't remember, maybe some of you were there. Um, and some of the stuff, some of what he was bringing forward reminded me of this too. And I don't remember if I said this kind of as the fine print, the disclaimer or whatever in the first session. But it's always good for us to remember that a spiritual teacher, well, if you're a spiritual teacher in this particular lineage, you have been asked to speak from experience rather than philosophy. It's kind of the bottom line. And also to recognize that nobody has ever described in language reality as such. That the best we can do, Adya always calls it, I plan on failing as best as I can. Doing the best you can to describe something that's ineffable, indescribable, and yet lived. And also that a spiritual teacher, a spiritual teaching, you can't really learn anything from it. Like it's not a knowledge, intellectual, conceptual, knowledge-based teaching. It's sort of like a guidepost as one finds what one fundamentally is through their own unique experience. The realization is the same through the ages. I mean, you can look at the spiritual masters and the spiritual teachings, and you can instantly start recognizing the thread of the particular realization that we might call no self. The realization is the same. The experience, blessedly, is unique and individual. So the teaching and the teacher have what you might call a transmission, which can seem sort of like what, woo woo, airy fairy or something, or like zzz, but it's actually pretty simple. There are a lot of, we don't necessarily see vibration, you might want to call it, like the wind. You don't see the wind other than by looking at the objects that it's moving. You don't actually see the wind. You see how the wind is behaving by looking at what is in the wind's field. Or, like, if you are a musician, if you pluck like a D string or the low E string on a guitar, or play treble C on a piano, anything that resonates at that vibration begins to vibrate. So that's really what transmission is. And honestly, that is the um, the gift of a spiritual teaching. The words, you know, some people are just incredible with the words, right? I mean, we have all the great examples through history. I mean, I don't know who you like to read, but, Rilke or, Meister Eckhart, Teresa of Avila, some of the great Rumi, the mystics who really could, wordsmith it. Adyashanti. But it's good, it's worthwhile, it's useful for every one of us to remember that the individual journey and path is the is the way. Uncovering and discovering what is within each and every one of us and all of existence. That realization is the same throughout the ages. I remember, you guys have probably heard me say this, but I'll say it again today. I took a class when I was at the University of Oregon when I was a young woman, I mean, probably not even 20 years old, called Great Religions of the World. And it was a year-long class. And when you were studying the Quran, you would be working with, a spiritual leader in that tradition. The New Testament, a spiritual person in that tradition. Dr. Kim, a spiritual master from Korea, taught the Bhagavad Gita, and like that. And the the beauty of that class was the introduction of the sameness of all of the mystery schools and mystic, spiritual, you might say, schools of experience. But each one of us will have our flavor, our experience of that. Adya said something in that intensive that really stuck with me when he was trying to explain this. And he said, never, not even one time in 24 years of teaching, has he been able to really explain what his experience truly is. I wrote that down. That resonated deeply. And yet, we are all wired up, you might say, to recognize the sameness, the fundamental, essential wholeness as it expresses in this beautiful garden that I'm looking at right here. So with that in mind and in heart, I wanted to bring forward today the kind of the fundamental, I guess, the the foundation of this teaching, which is identification. Identification and the change of occupancy, you might say, that occurs with the seeing through of the belief in me, of the belief in separation, of division, separation, which it hinges on a belief. And this belief is fed by the way our brains work, by our enculturation, and by our language. And most of you know just how interested in that I have always been since I was just small. I've been super interested in how words and language shape our experience of that reality. They're very useful, and it's beautiful to use language. It's part of the beauty of human beingness. But our particular way of being is to very definitely box things in once we name them. That's a tree. That's a this. That's a that. This is a hand. This is a finger, whatever it is. And in that, we see at the expense of the whole, we only see the individuality, the unique expressiveness of a tree or a thing, a hand, a certain someone, an object. But in reality, this object that seems so definite and defined and real is in no way separate from anything else. You know, how could we say that a plant growing in the garden is separate from the soil, the air, the sun, the cosmos, the atoms? Everything arises dependent on everything else. This and that arise together. There is no this without that. There's no that without this. It's allness. And we may get glimpses of this, you know. We may have a sense of it. It may make conceptual sense, like, okay, well, yeah, you know, somehow, mysteriously, the seed is now expressing and contained within, let's say, the sunflower. That those two, by language, are two separate things, but they exist as one thing. One doesn't exist without the other. This is very difficult, really. It sounds like, oh, yeah, okay. But for the mind, the languaging mind, the defining, conceptual, categorizing, naming aspect of our consciousness, which is useful, when it's seen for what it is. But when it's completely believed as a fundamental reality, I am this. This is what I am. I'm my story, I'm my history, I'm my name, whatever it is. I am me, fundamentally. And I end here at my skin, and then something else begins. It's a very convincing illusion, super convincing. And even if we've had a glimpse of the totality and the allness, it can still be a very convincing illusion when a reactive conditioning comes forward about other. But the view of eventually, this belief, this identification based on believing in the conceptual mind, the conceptual description, eventually it begins to crumble. It begins to crumble bit by bit by bit, unwinds, crumbles, dissolves into identification, you might say, the felt sense of I as I want to say as is, as that which is, meaning what people are languaging it as now, the present moment, you might say. Although that gives an element of time to it that is not actually experienced. Allness, wholeness, totality. And some of you have, heard me say this many times. Well, a friend of all of ours who happens to be on this phone, on this Zoom call, but I won't name names, has a husband who won't listen to audio because he says the same thing over and over and over. Yes. And so does David Hawkins. He even prefaces it in his books. It's just like, this is what I'm going to be doing, trying to come in this door, trying to come in that door, trying to come in this door, trying to come in any, saying it the same, or like Sharon Landers always says, there's maybe 3 or 4 things for me to say. But let's just say, for instance, that just as an example, so our minds can have something to kind of grab onto, that the body, your own personal body, this body with your sensory awareness and everything, is the totality of all that is. And let's say that the pointer finger on your left hand, everything in totality is going about its business naturally, rising, dissolving, rising, dissolving, coming, becoming, be going. instantaneously, always, forever. But somehow or another, this particular piece gains self-consciousness and starts thinking of itself as an it, as a me, as a thing. I am me. This is what I am. And there seems to be all this other stuff going on, but then there's me. And it starts feeling real lonely, right? And isolated, and like questioning its worth because it seems to stand outside of everything else. And then one day, it looks around. I'm a hand. Oh, wait, I'm an arm. Oh, wait, I'm a torso. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. Oh, wait. What am I? Where do I start? Where do I end? What is this? And it can never really again stuff itself back in to the idea that it is this separate from that and this and that and this and that and this and that. You can't do it. It saw through it. And there's still no knowing. How would you know what anything is in that experience? In fact, the unknowing is the view. It's the view from sort of then on. But the conceptual mind and what we might want to call the ego, but that word just gets so demonized, I hesitate to use it. But the process of belief that continues the idea of me gets unmoored, disoriented because it can't survive in that view. It doesn't survive in that view. And it kind of goes kicking and screaming. I mean, maybe there's one of us here today where that experience hasn't happened or isn't going to happen or whatever you want to say. And it's just going to be this smooth transition. But generally, deep conditioning called ego, deep belief, is so beyond, is so vast beyond any one person's experience that it doesn't when something sees its death coming, it will generally put up a lot of fight. And that's when all the conditioning starts pouring in. You know, you get a glimpse, maybe at retreat, maybe during the course, maybe just walking around down the street. The grace is just so instant these days, and the way it's pouring onto the planet with awakenedness. It could be, you know, you're eating popcorn, watching a silly movie, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, where did I go? Where is this me? But in these glimpses is just the best word I can come up with. Break, that kind of breaks through. it starts cracking the shell, cracking it open. This shell that's was so solidly identified as me. It just starts developing cracks, 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 right? It's cracking open, it's unwinding, it's unfolding. And as that happens, the process, I guess you might call it, the journey of unfolding brings forward deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper levels of conditioned belief and identity. And if we're lucky, we have some reflection of that within our relationships or whatever, so that we can bump up against it and recognize it for what it is and continue the process of disidentification. It can sound, um, well, it's gonna sound very strange to the conceptual mind. I mean, and really, it's because it's an experience, if you can even call it that, honestly, that's not even the right word, beyond conceptualization. It's so immediate and so intimate. I mean, really, the word immediacy comes pretty close. And it does it feels like a change of occupancy. That's kind of the closest I've ever come to really describing it. So the view opens into what I think this is maybe Thich Nhat Hanh, but I mean, who knows where these words come from? They're used through the ages, but interdependency, the Buddhist idea of dependent origination, the whole, not just what the me sees, hears, smells, thinks, feels, but the whole arises as itself, you might say, in its myriad. I mean, can we put a word on infinite expression as wholeness from one moment to the next? I mean, it necessitates realizing this, realizing it as an actual direct experiential reality can be really weird. Like everything, nothing, 25 times between here and the kitchen sink. All is together as one thing, itself, allness, existence as a whole. it precipitates a sort of dissolution of the notion of cause and effect, which only goes so far. Because where would you start? What caused what? If everything in existence, all of existence, the total of existence, everything that exists, moves as one existence, then what is, there's no two. There's no two there. There's no, it's alone, all one. That word is all one, alone. Everything is together as everything. And the lines are completely arbitrary. They're completely arbitrary. I mean, even within different cultures, right? I mean, I'm sure Jayashree could shed some light on this, but even within different cultural upbringings, the lines about where one thing starts and one thing ends and what words are really actually describing are completely different. Very arbitrary. Useful to communicate. Useful when seen as a relatively useful uh, expression in the moment. But when believed as the solidness, I mean, you know, how does one know right if one doesn't know there's no wrong? Connectedness, disconnectedness. These things arise together as the same thing. The opposites are one. The apparent opposites. And that which is beyond any experience of opposites. That which does not have any, it's indivisible. It's not characterizable in a conceptual way. So we might say the small self makes it sound kind of puny. I don't know, but self with a small s, it survives on a steady diet of grasping, pushing away, grasping, pushing away. Yes, no, yes, no. When that is interrupted through whatever means, a teaching, a moment of grace, I don't know, however it's interrupted for you, even for a moment, even for one split second, if that small self relaxes out of that, there is no identity there. I don't know if any of you experience that when you first wake up in the morning. First wake up. And you have to kind of go, where am I? Oh yeah. What am I doing today? Oh yeah, oh yeah. And it all starts coming back, you know. not a bad thing, it's a fun thing. But when the stream of phenomena is left to become and go without just left to its own naturalness, there's no identity. It takes something to build the little self and the me. It takes the experience of time, the experience of wanting or not wanting, and none of that is bad. It's not wanted. It is what it is. So the personality, you might say, the preferential expression, like like the clematis wants to be kept a lot more moist than the rose. That's natural. You see what I mean? It flows through naturally, uninhibited, unencumbered with the weight of belief. I was kind of contemplating this and trying to remember, which is a doozy here, but where have I experienced timelessness before, prior to awakened consciousness and the view that is here now? And I was remembering a long time ago. I mean, I don't know. I don't think my daughter was born. Somebody gave me a book, a Deepak Chopra book, and I haven't really tuned into him in a really long time. I think he's still kind of out there on the circuit, but he was one of the first guys to really start, writing these New York Times bestsellers about like enlightenment and awakened consciousness. And he wrote a book called, I think I have it right, Ageless Body, Timeless Mind. And there was this exercise in there where he had you imagine that you had amnesia, and just really bring that into your, an inability, an inability to remember, and also an inability to see the future. And he just had you kind of walk these two things closer and closer and closer and closer together, kind of in like the just meditative, silent space inside, to the place of immediacy, alwaysness. And at that time, I didn't really have any context for anything like that, and none of these sort of fancy spiritual words. And it kind of freaked me out because it was like, whoa, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. When the story stops. And yet, everything everything, arising totally spontaneously from nothing. And how we have come to some crazy notion that a conceptual mind will somehow know about that is something else, huh? That we somehow know that conceptually about life, which is arbitrarily what we call the period of time between when our mothers birth us and this body dissolves. It gets crazier and crazier when you see through it. It's like, what? I was walking through the forest with a friend when Tim and I were in Crestone, and she was like, oh, isn't that a beautiful dead, an old dead pine? And I conceptually, I understood where she was coming from, but I couldn't get there. I kept trying to see it as dead. And what does it mean? What does that mean? What is this thing we call dead? It looked like everything else, brilliantly, luminously lit up with the present immediacy of here. So we've been exploring as a togetherness and awakening, regardless of of who we are or what our previous realizations and experiences of awakenedness. The herald, the one adjective, I guess I might say, that truly comes close to the experience is fresh. Fresh. It's not a realization that takes on the weight of knowingness and becomes like, been there, done that, know it. I know how to tie my shoes. I grokked that when I was 3. Good to go. It's not of that realm. It's not of that realm. It's living and writing, living as, from, through the crest of the wave of immediate nowness. Right here, right now, right here, right now. Awakening in a fresh way, no matter what our past experiences, to this wholeness is the heart of being. Wholeness is another word for it, where what once seemed so clearly oppositional is so clearly one thing. Like Audrey always says, the front and the back of a hand. Which one is the hand? Which one captures the essence? What so clearly seen, felt, was lived as oppositional dividedness reveals itself to be whole. And the heart has no problem with that, right? We that's not something we learn. That's just something we are. Every single one of us, I'm sure, has had the experience of working really hard to try and stop spontaneous love coming from the heart. It's like, good luck, right? Yeah, I don't think so. That's not happening. That's a power beyond will, beyond personal will, beyond I want, I don't, I want, I don't. Beyond it. I understand that there can be a sense of when the belief, when even as the conditioning is arising to be disbelieved and disidentified, there can be a sense of disconnectedness, whatever that sense may be. You know, people go on things like soul retrievals, and it's like, well, I mean, I'm practical. I'm a ranch girl. I'm just very practical. It's like, if you're alive and living and able to even entertain the idea that you've lost your soul, you're you're good. You got your soul. You're there. I mean, you know, just say it. The disconnected is a is a piece of the misidentification, because we can never be disconnected ever, 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 ever from the love that is loving us into existence now. Yeah, absolutely. Some human conditions are more preferred than others. Some human emotions are more preferred than others. That's a given. We all know that. But even in the deepest reactive conditioning, there is disconnection is a belief that with no actual reality. We can't be disconnected because everything is everything all the time. There's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to go. We think we can go somewhere, and that's called conditioning and defense. And as this process of awakening deepens, that ability to defend, to disconnect, disassociate, it can no longer be found. Those disappear, which absolutely does not mean that a person just kind of lies down and says, ah, okay, you know, I have no more, just, I'm a doormat, do whatever, man, it's all good. No, 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 no. That's not the experience at all. The expression moves as naturalness rather than defendedness. It moves as wholeness. It will fiercely move in the direction of harmony. Fiercely. Nature is fierce. Remember watching? Well, I mean, I guess, there's Animal Planet and all of that now. I don't get cable TV and I don't watch much of that. But when I was a kid, it was Mutual of Omaha's Wild Kingdom. And, it was the fierceness of it all. So, awakened heart, awakened wholeness truly is the freedom to love, but only as love. And look, all of existence is love. It takes any um, expression it needs to. It's definitely not like a, well, whatever, I'm awake, I'm good. You're never going to hear any of the masters talking like that. They're all kind of crazy and eccentric and doing some real wild, untamed things. as as responsiveness incarnated. In the mind, I mean, and it might be different for you. And like I started out with today, I mean, but the most important thing is how you discover it within your own self. But generally, the mind will experience it as disorientation, grasping, kind of judgmental lockdown for safety's sake. Um, the heart, more like disconnected, um, unworthy somehow, isolated, um, or that sense of kind of extreme self consciousness where it's like nobody understands me. And it will feel like an idea for a while. Even after we've seen through the idea, it can still sometimes, you have to take it on faith because the moment is so intense. But It's impossible. It's impossible to the point of irrelevant to be disconnected from what we are. You can't be disconnected from the infinite, eternal expression of all waysness, isness, wholeness, totality. Even in the deep, deep experience of the void of no thingness, it's not, there's no place to go. There's no separateness. None. None whatsoever. No division. It's love, giving way is 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 love. That's it. That's it. And the stories about a separate reality, a separate narrator, experiencer, whatever you want to call that sense of me, are just stories. They're ways of conceptualizing physical reality. There's no fundamental truth, no essence. The story is lived joyfully. It's not bad news. The ego hears it as like, whoa, what the heck? The individuality soars, just like at the beginning when we were talking about how this is a day of the phoenix. I'm gonna read something and then I think we'll take a break. What did oh, I remember. From Adya's My Secret is Silence. It's called I Have Come Here. I have come here into this life, not of my own will, but of the will of the Hidden One, the One who sprouts every seed, the One who causes the leaves to fall, the One who beats hearts and breathes air into lungs. I have come here as a spark cast off of the eternal fire, looking for dry grass and a gentle breeze to kindle the Hidden One's heat into flame. It really becomes seen, really just actually lived and seen, and just like every day as that. The flaming brilliance, luminous, eternal fire of existence, the wholeness. Okay, 2:15. Let's come back at 2:30. It's 2:15 now. Thank you. So just bringing our collective presence, our togetherness, our communion into the right here and right now, the illuminated present. And for a moment, as a together wholeness, consciously and intentionally lending our spark, our individual, unique spark that has been cast from the eternal flame in the heart of all being. With our collective intention, we catch fire, lighting up each other, our environment, our loved ones, our own personal experience, all our relations, the whole of existence, the whole, the totality, radiating and illuminating, consciously giving way to the light behind each of our eyes that is no different than the light of everything. And just relaxing into this wisdom and truth that we are light, even if we don't feel like it, even if we don't think the world looks like it. Asking, asking for the universal wisdom, the universal love, the universal heart to become conscious in our experience, to be a guide, not as something that comes from outside of ourselves, but from within and as and through and from ourselves, expressing as the one true self. And just allow, relax into, sink into this shared intention of awakening, not as a end point, but as a way of being, a way of living. Consciously giving way to the great mother of all existence, the heart, the light, the love, the giver, and willingly, together, with shared intention, lighting up, catching fire, the fire that doesn't burn or harm, but is eternally illuminating, birthing, giving, gracing, just allowing what the conceptual mind comes up with, how it will look, what will it be, how will I know it, what are the words, all the stuff just flows through consciousness like the wind, flows through the illumined now. I can feel the heart in every cell, every breath. Lighting up, lighting up. Radiating. I'm going to let you guys go, but I just want to read one thing to close. It's from Original Meditation, The Aramaic Jesus and the Spirituality of Creation by Neil Douglas Klotz. He's my all-time fave. This is from the Quran. My beloved, just to make sure that no one misunderstands what is necessarily a mystery, please tell them, before there was anything, or any no thing, from which a thing could come, the source of love was there. The heavens and earth, all communions and all individualities arise from and in sacred unity, and they are all still arising. The design of the one's creative command does not fix a finished product at any moment of human time. All things are becoming eternally. Please remind everyone, creation is still going on. Another way of saying it is through this parable. When the wholeness directs creation, in any moment it carves being into its very essence with the word be. And this echoes and re-echoes through you and all beings. You change and grow and change and form cells and universes, always guided by, through, in, from, and as sacred unity. I love you. I love you. I love you. I love you. And keep me posted on what's working, what's not working, questions, comments. I love you guys. Have a great evening.